The scene opens with two men in a tense standoff. One kneels, defeated, while the other strides forward, his bloodied sword scraping the ground. The standing man chuckles darkly, remarking how ironic it is that even a hero like the kneeling man ended up in such a sorry state. If only he'd stayed safe at home, sipping tea and petting his cat, this tragedy could have been avoided. The kneeling man, Hayden Reich, known as the Fallen Star, pleads with his executioner, Julian. Hayden asks how Julian could betray him like this. Julian smirks, saying Hayden should have treated him better when he was the hero's loyal sidekick. Hayden, desperate, questions if Julian can really kill his master so coldly. Julian's smirk widens into a laugh as he raises his sword high, quipping that it's easier than skipping leg day at the gym. With a swift strike, he severs Hayden's head, and the scene fades to black as a scream echoes. A man clutches his head, freaking out in front of his computer monitor. He's in disbelief, yelling that Hayden's death was pointless, like forgetting to save a game after hours of progress. This man, Lee Se, is the top-ranked player of the game Kill the Demon King, having sunk 100,000 hours into it, probably in-game time, unless he's secretly a time traveler. We learn Hayden Reich was the legendary hero of the Northern Front Line, a demon-hunting genius and the game's noble protagonist. Lee can't fathom why the developers, Framl, would kill off his favorite character, especially when they teased a sequel. He feels betrayed, like ordering pizza and getting a salad instead. Lee rants about canceling his pre-order, furious that Julian, the traitorous villain with slit eyes, a nickname he assumes means sly rather than anything offensive, might be the sequel's protagonist. Comments online speculate the same, but Lee disagrees, calling Julian a backstabber who doesn't deserve the spotlight. He hovers over the cancel button, hesitates, then clicks it, muttering that Kill the Demon King was fun but now feels like a scam. Lying in bed, he grumbles that no other game matches its stunning graphics and vast world, which helped him escape his real-world blues after starting a soul-crushing job. He sighs, picking up his potted plant, his only companion now, joking that he gets why old folks love orchids, they're less dramatic than game developers. As he waters it, a notification pings. It's a message from Framl, confirming he's the guy who's played their game for 5 years straight. Lee wonders if it's an automated reply, like those annoying customer service bots. He responds, and Framl asks if he cancelled his pre-order because he hated the story's twist. Caught off guard, Lee mutters that this sounds like they're dodging his refund, like a shady vendor at a flea market. Another notification arrives, urging him to click a link. He does, and a blinding light erupts from his screen. His glasses fly off, and he's yanked toward the monitor, yelling that he needs to unplug this madness before it eats him like a sci-fi horror flick. He mashes the power button, but it's useless. He's sucked into the screen, tumbling through darkness, wondering if he's falling into the void or just having a really bad day. Suddenly, a wasteland appears below, and he crashes into it, groaning as he recognizes it as the battlefield where Hayden and Julian clashed. Struggling to sit up, Lee spots a scorpion demon charging at him, its pincer snapping like it's auditioning for a monster movie. He realizes it's a creature from the game. A stat window pops up, revealing he's an exceptional swordsman with killer instincts, news to him, since his real-world skills are more about microwave dinners. Screaming, he bolts, but the scorpion's hot on his tail, tearing up the ground like it's got a personal grudge. Lee realizes one hit will turn him into Demon Chow. As it lunges, he braces for death, but the attack doesn't even sting, talk about plot armor. The scorpion swings again, and Lee ducks, gritting his teeth and throwing an uppercut, thinking he might as well go down swinging. To his shock, the beast staggers, and Lee marvels at how light and strong his body feels, like he's suddenly a superhero who skipped the gym but got the powers anyway. Then it hits him, an unseen message from Fremel told him to rewrite the story through character repossession. Assuming he's Hayden, Lee runs from the scorpion, which screeches and leaps. He grabs a sword, plants his feet, and smirks, grateful he's in Hayden's body, the character he's mastered over thousands of hours. He swings, slicing the scorpion nearly in half, killing it instantly and cracking the ground like a bad action movie. "That's wild," he gasps, amazed by Hayden's strength. He thinks he can rewrite the story to save Hayden from Julian's betrayal. A notification dings, informing him he's unlocked the crescent slash, a basic swordsmanship move. Confused, Lee notes this isn't Hayden's skill. Peeling off his hoodie and checking his reflection in the sword, he freezes. Silver hair, poker face, slit eyes, not Hayden, but Julian Crippard, the Demon King's vessel with immaculate mana control and top-tier sword skills. Lee screams, horrified he's stuck in the traitor's body instead of the hero's, like signing up for a night role but getting cast as the villain. The scene shifts to a lavish estate, where Lee, now fully Julian, stares into a mirror, still reeling. He tries to widen his eyes, joking that they're so narrow he could star in a squinting contest. It's been a week, and despite his efforts, he's trapped in this nightmare, like a gamer stuck in a glitchy VR. He sighs, exhausted, noting one of Julian's traits forces him to speak politely, even if he's cursing internally, a bit like autocorrect making you sound like a Victorian gentleman. Smirking, he admits Julian's pretty handsome, joking that his small head must be why everyone loves him in Korea, whatever that means. The scene jumps to a nervous man, legs shaking like he's auditioning for a jitterbug contest, dreading a meeting with Julian because it feels like walking into a lion's den. He opens a door, calling out to Julian, who recognizes him as Sir Horn, a direct blood relative. Horn asks if Julian's okay, and Julian, playing along, says he's fine, thanks to Horn's help. Horn, relieved, mentions Julian fainting earlier, laughing awkwardly in a way that makes Lee cringe. Both men size each other up. Julian, surprised Horn showed up in person, wondering what he's plotting. Horn, noting Julian's calm demeanor, thinks he's no pushover and considers testing him, like a boss checking if you're slacking on the job. The conversation takes a sharp turn as Horn, still jittery, decides to spill some gossip. He leans in, whispering that there's a rumor Julian's lost his memory, like he's a soap opera character with sudden amnesia. Julian raises an eyebrow, joking that it explains why everyone's been staring at him like he's forgotten his lines in a play. It's suspicious, he admits, as the whispers around him have been louder than a bad karaoke night. Horn, caught off guard, wonders if Julian's rattled by the rumor. Julian locks eyes with him, calling out his name in a tone that sends chills down Horn's spine, like he's just been jump-scared in a horror game. Julian asks if Horn buys into the gossip, his piercing gaze making him look like a villain who just stole the hero's lunch money. Horn's heart races, and he stammers that he'd never believe such nonsense, realizing his plan to probe Julian is backfiring faster than a prank gone wrong. In truth, Horn mistakes Julian's menacing vibe for a sign he knows exactly why Horn's here, sent by the Noble Elders Association, no less. With no way out, Horn clears his throat, urging Julian not to take the maid's chatter too seriously, like it's just watercooler gossip. He shifts gears, getting to the real reason for his visit. Despite Julian's recent injuries, the Elders Association sent a message, and Horn's the unlucky messenger. We learn the Elders Association is a snooty group of nobles obsessed with bloodlines, ready to throw a fit if a collateral family member like Julian tries to grab power, like gatekeepers at an exclusive club. Even though Julian's from a side branch, he's loyal to the royal family, practically their guard dog. But his jaw-dropping swordsmanship and magic skills make him a problem for the elders, a thorn they'd love to pluck out faster than you can say, "We're out of coffee." Julian asks what the message is, and Horn hesitates, like he's about to deliver bad news wrapped in glitter. He says Julian must serve as an instructor for the Shut Eyes entrance test. Julian pauses, explaining that Shut Eyes is a big deal, a secretive group handling covert palace missions while doubling as the Royal Guard. It's an elite squad of martial arts superstars, and Julian's already a member. The fact that the elders, who aren't his biggest fans, picked him for this role raises red flags, like getting an invite to a party from someone who hates your guts. Julian wonders if he should even bother with their request. Horn, smirking, says Julian's usually sharp enough to dodge the elders' traps, like a cat avoiding a bath. He scrambles to think of how to convince him. But Julian, throwing a curveball, casually agrees to be the supervisor, leaving Horn so stunned he looks like he's about to glitch out of reality, wondering if he heard right or if Julian's just trolling him. He warns him that the injury is too severe, but Julian insists it's already healed, peeling off the bandage. Hin's eyes widen, realizing Julian means business, and mutters that he's grabbing the bull by the horns. Julian's acting bold, unaware of the stakes, probably trying to win some favor. As Hin moves to leave, unsure of Julian's next move and wanting some space, Julian calls out, "Hold on a sec." Hin freezes, heart racing, wondering if Julian won't let him go. He turns back, and Julian extends a hand, offering a small plant, saying it'll bring him calm. Bro, lurking nearby, looks downright sinister. Hin stumbles out, legs trembling so much he collapses to his knees, gasping in fear. He mumbles that he forgot Julian's chilling nickname, the Smiling Executioner, and now he gets why it fits. Julian lets out a sigh, noting he's handled one issue, all because his room's overflowing with orchids he's trying to offload, something he mentioned in his sleep. He hints that someone's waiting for him, keeping their identity vague, and grabs his blade, muttering that if he's heading out as Julian, he'd be foolish to go unarmed. Plus, he needs to dress the part. Opening his closet, he's taken aback, grumbling that Julian's wardrobe is wild and not his style, but he has to play the role perfectly to avoid suspicion. He steps out, calling to Hin that he's ready and eager for the interview. Julian asks Hin to lead the way and share where it's happening. The scene shifts to a carriage rolling through a forest. Hin explains, as he mentioned before, the Shut Eyes enrollment test will take place on the Vile Academy's training grounds. Julian muses that Vile Academy wasn't a key spot in the game, though it rings a bell. He wonders aloud what it's like, catching Hin off guard since Julian supposedly from the academy. Julian brushes it off, saying it's been a while and things must have changed. Hin nods, adding that revisiting the academy might be risky, especially if someone there remembers Julian from back then. He hopes no one does. The carriage halts, and the driver announces they've reached Vile Academy. Julian marvels at its size, saying he's only seen it in the game. Hin catches this, asking what he just said. Julian laughs, claiming it was nothing. Hin's clearly spooked, while Julian's inwardly panicking, admitting even the game's stunning graphics can't compare to this. Reality feels sharper than any game, no matter how vivid. Hin, though, finds Julian terrifying and wonders what scheme is behind his strange behavior. Julian senses Hin's fear and feels a pang of guilt. He calls out to him, startling Hin further, and says he's free to go, thanking him for the escort. Hin hesitates, saying he's curious about the test since he's already here. Julian raises an eyebrow, noting Hin's eagerness to leave earlier. Something's off, Hin's got a dark vibe hovering over him. Julian wonders if it's mana, but it's not his own power. Maybe it's raw emotion, fear itself. He checks his status window, which reveals his knack for picking up on negative emotions aimed at him. The aura's color confirms it, pure fear. Reflecting, Julian recalls he was always sharp at reading emotions in the game, especially fear. He'd use it to win fights without striking a blow, or stoke anger to make opponents sloppy. This trait explains it all. Hin's sticking around despite his fear, likely because the Elder Association ordered him to watch Julian. Suspicion creeps in, what's their game? Julian's notorious, a problem they'd love to eliminate, especially with rumors swirling that he's lost his memories. Now's their chance to act. But Julian's determined to survive and get back to reality. Someone bumps into him and starts apologizing. Julian looks up, flashing a smile, but his villainous face sends the guy crashing to the ground, screaming. This isn't good, people are whispering, calling him the crazed dog of the royal family, assuming the kid's doomed for crossing Julian. Hin urges Julian to ease up, pointing out the guy's just a kid. Julian hasn't even reacted yet, but he gets it, he hated Julian too for killing his favorite character. He senses the crowd's fear, tinged with anger. Why couldn't Julian have been less of a jerk? It's too much attention. He needs to calm things down. A woman's voice greets him, and he looks up to see her right in his face, startling him. It's Eileen Donashin, a main character from the game. She's a vile academy instructor tied to the Adrian Empire's Mage Tower, a prodigy who mastered the metal element at Tier 5 by age 24. She guided Hayden in the academy arc, but why is she greeting Julian? How do they know each other? He rubs his neck, deciding to play along and lighten the mood. But then he catches her aura, not fear or anger, but resentment. What did Julian do to enrage someone like her? As an advanced mage, she's dangerous, and he can't afford to stand out and get killed. He needs to defuse this. Trying to lean into Julian's persona, he asks who gave a halfling like her permission to speak to him. Her resentment flares, but she stays silent, making things painfully awkward. Inside, he's screaming, he didn't mean to say that, and it only made things worse. This is spiraling. He reaches for his blade, asking if her halfling status means she's half-deaf too. Embracing the villain role, he unsheathes his sword, asking if she knows the sound someone makes when they die. When Julian begins to step forward, he begins laughing inwardly, telling her she must be frightened and now he can soothe her. But the reaction is contrary as she begins releasing her mana, inquiring if he's unsheathing his blade, telling him even if it is him, he shouldn't be behaving like this around students and professors. And this is an act of violence against the whole academy, and she will not let him off this. Bro's plan was in the making from the very beginning. He did not even consider it. And naturally, since she detests him, she tells him to get ready as she's not going to be easy to beat. But he wasn't interested in this and he only wanted to frighten her a little bit. Alan acts first by rushing forward, putting hands together to cast some sort of spell. But Julian is able to deflect it with his sword, and he even sends it flying onto the ground, breaking it. He begins to think if they are really fighting at the moment, but she's just angry because he's turning away during their fight. She screams, ordering the students to back off from this place at once. They seem concerned but choose to obey her, and even Hen begins running away wondering what the hell is happening, and he should have left when Julian instructed him to. When she's distracted, we hear Julian laughing and telling her she shouldn't be looking away from him. When he charges in close to her, she erects a magic barrier which he breaks and tells her that looking away during a fight is unsafe. She becomes embarrassed and flustered and sticks her hands out, casting yet another spell, which he has to bob and weave from, and decides to create some space. He explains that those were some scary-ass attacks, and it feels like she's going through her actual emotions. We notice her panicking on the inside because she did not plan on them being deadly, but he dodged all of her attacks, which she had no less expected of Julian. She considered him the perfect noble at one point. As we notice him speaking with a group of other students back at school, and the girls were swooning over him that he's more charismatic than any of the other nobles. And even when she was a freshman was lost by his good looks. She loved him so much and thought he was so handsome and that he was really the best example of a noble. Not only does he have many acquaintances, he is also considered an up-and-coming star of the empire in terms of swordsmanship. As she went on gazing at him in the corridor, she tightened her hold on her book. And she has said that when she glances at him, she becomes filled with hope that the fact she's a collateral line won't be a hindrance. And that Julian's someone she looked up to. And she really thought he could transform society's bias against collateral line people. She couldn't distinguish between respect and how she felt then, as she gave him a love letter. And we could tell her hands were shaking and she got rejected. And it's a central memory she winces about. About hella frequently, just as all of your cringy memories. She gets carried away with her feelings, charging at a strong attack, firing it straight at Julian. He dodges again, but naturally, it would have been hella worse if he hadn't. He tells her that was close and asks why her face is so red and whether or not she's this pissed. But all she needs him to do is hit him once, as that will diffuse her anger. He knows that he needs to begin wrapping things up. He speeds behind her in what feels like seconds, and when she turns it is too late because he hits her on the back of the head with his hilt, but with only a tap, and says they need to cut it out. She keeps blushing and she inquires what the hell he believes he is doing and whether he is looking down on her. He could have killed her if he actually wanted to, because she felt so much mana emitted from him, inquiring why he did not go hard because he did not even use the moonlight sword. He inquires whether she actually wants to know and starts laughing, and she starts to misconstrue, stating that possibly he is finally recognizing her feelings after all this while. And she starts blushing even more. He informs him that it is Hin's first time here and therefore cannot guide him where the training center is located, and the rest are too afraid also to guide him where to go also. And if she knows, then she must pave the way for him. He refers to her once again as a halfling. She knows that her hopes were mere illusions and can't imagine the reason was something so ordinary as this. As Julian begins to walk, he mentions that the moonlight sword is special to Julian. Typically, when you wrap a sword with aura, it glows with light in the shape of an aura around the sword. Julian's sword is different, though. The sword itself transforms into a bluish hue, as if it contains moonlight inside of it. And he had used this sword thousands of times to slay demons. And after seeing this, people named it Moonlight Sword for respect and fear. So, therefore, the sword is the source of power and identity of Julian. So, how could he possibly know how to use it if he's not even Julian? It's a bad sign. That she's already beginning to get it, and this is fairly bad. So, therefore, he must ensure that she doesn't figure out whatsoever. So, therefore, he begins deciding for himself, but Hand and Eileen misinterpret it as him plotting something. He inquires if something is wrong, but both immediately stop, telling him it's nothing. And she keeps him going until they're finally at the training grounds of the academy. He pushes the door open, stating that he hopes everyone is fine, and he apologizes for running a bit behind because Eileen got distracted on her way over. She begins to get irked, but bites her tongue. Julian then approaches them and introduces himself and informs them that he'll be responsible for administering their entrance exam today, but is sure everyone knows who he is. Hin looks around inquiring where someone was and notices precisely who he was searching for, stating that this is the second son of the Torso family and he knew that he would turn up. The Torso family are renowned for having had a long-standing friendship with the Krippert family for a very long time. It's usually considered a great privilege to be linked to the Shut Eyes as they are directly related to the imperial family. However, this comes at the cost that to get in is extremely competitive and the admission test is a tug-of-war between an instructor and the candidate. And in the process, if Julian brings along the second son of the Torso family, the dishonored defeat, the Elders Association will seize this as a chance to humble him. Julian indicates that everyone here appears to want to join the Shut Eyes, inquiring if he is right. They respond, "Yes, sir." And he indicates that all he can see is a collection of cowardly trash. And he begins laughing. He states that they all appear naive, like they have had smooth upbringing. And the decoration they refer to as swords simply makes him chuckle. And the Shut Eyes that they all desire to go into is the bloodiest location here in the Empire. And since they are his seniors, he will provide them with an experience of how it will be. And with that, they will begin the entrance exam now. He grasps his sword, informing them that the acceptance criteria is none other than for them to execute him. They begin panicking at this. He right away begins to cringe at what he has said, informing them that now he's done it, and he only learned just now that the entrance exam is a duel. Horan told him not to hold back the kids. Retreating was what he could do in his battle with Eileen. And if he were to join a sanctioned duel, then it could turn disastrous because everyone would realize that he's actually weak. And because he's not wielding the moonlight sword, they'll believe that it was just a rumor and it never existed or that perhaps he indeed lost his memories. These are things that are likely to happen. As he begins to feel even more pressure from the other students, he's also pressured due to Eileen. If he begins behaving suspiciously, she might begin attacking him as well, which means he may not be able to get out of here. If that happens, the optimal thing to do is taunt them off the bat. He begins shouting, wondering what's wrong with everyone, that it will only stop if he dies or if there are no applicants left. The children begin to look frightened, and no one does anything at all until one of the children puts his hand up hesitantly and states that he forfeits. Many of the other kids begin to do the same, scared, stating that they don't want to be there anymore. The Torso family kid realizes this is wrong and clenches his teeth, but goes along with it because he too ain't want none of that smoke. Horan says there ain't no way this is occurring and all of the kids have now forfeited. Julian begins covering his face laughing. He is proud of himself and turns around, walking past Eileen and Hen and declaring with this the exam is done since there are no applicants left inside. He's ecstatic, claiming that he did it. Just like always, his cruel nature assists him in such circumstances, but he does think about Eileen and whether her fear for him conquered her dislike. But instead she's giving him a very foreign expression to him as he can't sense any negative emotions at all. He wonders what the hell is going on. He starts to think maybe his skill isn't working or if it's even possible for a trait to stop working all of a sudden. She begins chewing her lip, explaining that what he had done reminded her of the past where he stayed out of unnecessary battles by intimidating his enemies rather. He fails to realize he can only see the negative emotions and not the positive ones. A few minutes later, at the closed eyes, Hin begins calling out for Julian. And even gets in front of him, saying that he did well work, but Julian had other thoughts and places his hands on his shoulders, scaring him to have a massive fear. Hand wants to know what the matter is. Julian tells him it's nothing, and it was he who did all the work, but he was just checking whether his talent was still effective. Somebody else hollers at Julian extremely enthusiastically that he was great in there, and Julian inquires as to who he is. He states that he is Lazarus, and he tells him that it's his honor to meet him and he is responsible for the administrative task here, but that the rumor about his losing his memories must have been untrue after all, since he completed the exam without having to wrestle with any of the applicants. Julian is amazed at how much this guy can talk. Lazarus goes on to state that he heard the second son of the Torso family was among the applicants, but even that did not dissuade him from not giving them a soft time and is what is expected of him. Hin then becomes surprised and inquires whether he is attempting to indicate the second son of the Torso family did not pass the test. Lazarus indicates that's not what he meant whatsoever, but Hin is angry, demanding how dare him be so arrogant for someone who's still in training. And he indicates that after knowing the relationship between the Torso family and the Krippert family, Julian informs Hin that he's misunderstanding something here. Or perhaps it's the Torso clan that is the one misunderstanding, and that the Shut Eyes won't accept nobles in the first place. Because it's straight under the Imperial clan, they only take commoners or downed nobles. Horan states he's a noble himself though, and Julian reminds him he's a collateral branch of the family. He's a Kripart halfling. So he is a dog of the Imperial family, not the Kvarts. So that means the second son of the Torso family took the entrance exam in spite of knowing he could not pass the second round of screening. He queries whether the family is attempting to learn their son from experience or something, or the other way around, there was some other plan involved in this entrance exam all along. Horan begins to shake hella bad, questioning if it means that he did indeed know, and that although he knew it was a trap and that he was aligned with them, that he still let him tag along. But Julian insists there's no way that can be, and perhaps it was just an easy misunderstanding. But Hen won't even look at him anymore. And Julian says otherwise it would be unfortunate for him. A little later, he goes back to his mansion and the maids begin to greet him, saying welcome home. And as he passes by, they ask if he will be dining, but he replies no. And then reminds them not to allow anybody into his office. The maids agree. And the moment he enters his office, he places his sword on the table and lets out a great big fat sigh, saying that based on Hin's reaction a while ago, it seems like the Elders Association actually connived something for this after all, and he was fortunate enough not to get caught by anyone today, but he suspects how long his good fortune will continue. And at some point or another, the association actually would notice his shortcomings, and that would mean that he would be expelled from the family. He then gazes down upon his blade and states the fact that he proved he was unable to handle the moonlight sword truly troubles him, but it would be something that would be worth fighting with because it would mean he'd be able to overpower others. And if so, as he tightens his hold on the blade, he states that it may actually be worth a shot to unlock the moonlight sword's power while he is able to. He keeps drawing out the blade and then starts to examine it. The aura disappears off of it in a matter of seconds, and all that remains is his reflection, and he states that it is just as he expected. It won't turn on. The ability that Julian possesses as a great swordsman does not give him any issue with swordsmanship itself. When he holds the sword, the trajectory of the sword becomes very apparent to him. While he's checking his stats, the great swordsman ability basically states that he's been able to wield a sword from birth. If it's a sword, no matter what kind, he can use it. But this is not quite enough for him to use the moonlight sword proper. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of named characters, never mind the countless people in the Empire who are just as good as him. Not just as good as him, but rather as good as the real Julian in terms of swordsmanship. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of named characters alone. But the contrast between them and Julian is stark. There is a preponderance of disparity in skill for doing aura or man use. That's why he was able to get by with a pathological thinking process. And he asks himself if there is actually no hope for him to do it at the moment. If the mana were to travel in the opposite direction, his vital organs might get ruined because controlling mana is extremely risky. He's reluctant but thinks there's no other option but for him to perform it since he needs to prove himself at some point. If the idea of mana in the game within this world are the same, then he who has been playing it for so many hours now already knows the way. As he begins to focus his mana, he mentions that he must utilize the saved up bit in his heart and transmit it into the mana meridian. Of the 38 mana meridians, 6 are significant gray veins. And of those, the head's great vein is the concentration of mana that serves as a bridge between his heart. So if he were to turn on this area, it would all be he needs. Something then breaks within him. And when he opens his eyes, the aura begins to emanate out from him and he can sense it. As it's surrounding his body, he grips his sword tighter, speaking about how he just needs to move it to another location, which would be his blade. But since he's doing his best, the resistance is much stronger than he anticipated. But he knows this body can do it. And after some fumbling, it proves to be a success. Sort of because it did not last long at all. He assures that while it has manifested itself, it is still weak. He tells him if he compared it to the moon, it would still be a crescent. But at least. The moon at least appeared, and that's not too bad. The following day in the training grounds, he spreads his stance and begins to unsheath his sword and at once cuts 3 training dummies in 2 with the moonlight sword. And as they begin to fall apart, we're seeing it glowing on his blade. He claims at least to have gotten to the level of a knight. Took only a day, damn. Now he just needs to finish his moonlight sword, but his game knowledge is running low and he needs someone who knows him instead. Julian, since he needs to go ask them for recommendations. One of the maids shouts after him, letting him know that he has a visitor. He is curious if Julian ever had any friends, but this is just the timing. It's none other than Lazarus, who addresses him, and he realizes he was totally mistaken because it's only the tier 1000 yapper. Lazarus is simply taken aback that he got his name right and says surely it cannot be due to his attitude yesterday. Julian wants to know how Joachim is supposed to forget someone who talks so much damn, and who knows, maybe he's fearless or stupid. So he asks him what does he do here. Lazarus replies that it's easy and he came with an order from the commander to check the results of the entrance exam which was conducted at the academy yesterday from him. Julian is perplexed and states that he believed he saw the results himself. Lazarus indicates that obtaining the results from the interviewer and passing them on are procedure. Julian indicates that sure is quite inefficient and it sounds like they are simply getting him to do busy work. He states to inform that there are 0 passes on the entrance exam. Lazarus informs him that he will let the commander know right away, but Julian hesitates because he knows something, instructing Lazarus to wait. Assuring him that he's going straight to the commander from here, Lazarus says yes. Julian informs him that he wants to do it himself. Afterwards Lazarus asks him if he is serious. Julian replies in the affirmative and they can walk to his carriage together and he will drive him there. Lazarus begins to get some anxiety, inquiring as to if he maybe did something wrong, stating this is clearly due to yesterday. Julian tells him no, and he's only being thoughtful because he thought that he would be uncomfortable returning by himself and that Julian needed to have lived a more compassionate life. But since things have progressed so far, he should go seek his counsel. And he is confident that the commander is familiar with Julian well. And he will ensure that the Crypt family can never plot anything when Shut Eyes is tied by speaking up. It leaps to the headquarters as a man bursts through a door informing the commander there is an issue. The commander inquires what it is since it has to be something important. The guy informs him that he himself has arrived and the commander inquires who he is referring to. He informs him that it is none other than Julian who has arrived in person. The commander begins to roll his chair back slightly, inquiring if he is sure at all that it is Julian. It cuts to the Adrathan Imperial Palace. Julian remarks that he never imagined that he would see this place with his own eyes. The continent of Rosinda serves as the primary setting of the game and is controlled by 3 large countries. The most powerful of the 3 would be the Adrathan Empire, where Julian happens to reside. Following the sealing of the demon god Barbados, the ruined nations slowly came together under a powerful monarchy which became a superpower. And the emblem of that strength is this magnificent palace before him. Inside, he is freaking out, declaring that this is so crazy. But naturally, he maintains a poker face. Lazareth is wondering why the hell he's laughing maniacally as he finds him intimidating. He's also genuinely worried. Under normal circumstances, the only means of accessing him would have been through his servants, yet now he wishes to report directly to the captain of the Shut Eyes, and he even took someone like him with him, and he does not know what his intention is. Other individuals see Julian too, commenting that it's strange that he's here alone, and they believed he was hurt, but he's fine, so perhaps the rumor about the memory loss was simply not true. Lazareth comments that this is a tremendous privilege, but he's worried he'll pass out at any moment. And Julian remarks that the palace is really impressive. Lazareth is puzzled as to why he's bringing that up, as Julian goes on saying that as this is the first gate that all people can approach, the captain would then be beyond the locked second gate. Lazareth affirms that indeed this is so, but he asks him why he's telling him these things as this is general knowledge. He begins to develop a misunderstanding in his mind, stating that this is none other than a test. Due to his face all condescending, it is as if he is trying to tell him that an inept trainee such as himself is to be tested once more. And if he does not guide him well, he might get expelled. But naturally, Julian comments that he doesn't know if it's due to his own field of vision being broader than in the game, but he can't even locate the Shut Eyes building. He asks Lazareth what is wrong and if he perhaps is not well. Lazarus replies not at all. He's perfectly well as it's important in the group. Julian is thinking about what else could be wrong with them, but they drive on through the gates and Julian tells them they're here. Lazarus asks him if he passed. But naturally, Julian doesn't have a clue what he's discussing. Lazarus explains that he thought that was a test and Julian tells him not at all, wanting to know why on earth he would need to test him. Lazarus explains that this implies that he's already a trained member of the Shut Eyes. Julian only asks himself why he isn't responding to his question while Lazarus begins bowing to him, explaining that if he would excuse him for a minute, then he flees singing. Julian states that he sure is an odd individual and he isn't certain if he should have, and he should be stating this as the imposter Julian. A man comes over to him and tells him that the captain invited him in. Julian states that it's time for him to finally go get his boss. We then find out that the captain's name is Odwin Baladar and he is the last of the fallen Baladar family. Odwin's leadership and strength are well over enough to qualify him as a captain. He is the only one who can coordinate and command the members of the Shut Eyes who take orders only from the imperial family, and he's thinking about how charismatic he'll be because it's making him really a bit nervous. He stands before the door and knocks and asks if he can come in. He is told to come in by a woman, and when he comes in, we get to see a small girl sitting on the chair working on papers. She greets Julian saying that it has been long. It turns out that Odwin is female. She informs him that she was informed he got injured, requesting to know if he's okay. Julian is baffled, stating that he wasn't really all that interested in the Shut Eyes, so he didn't have a clue, but that she is incredibly small, really quite a bit at that. She is a little girl. He recalls the captain having a smaller body, but he never imagined that it would be this bad, and that rather than a woman, she would be closer to a teenage girl. She then points her finger at him, stating that he was going to tell her that she's small again. He replies, of course not, but in his heart says that because she had known what he was thinking, then she knows him well. Odwin inquires about his wound, stating she needs a report. Julian is thinking about what he should say and that he should be careful about what he does say in front of her because in the worst scenario, she might suspect him. And although he's Julian, for that matter, he should be respectful to the captain. Since he's so obedient, he's almost their dog. He then makes up his mind to go with it, first thanking her most of all for her concern, telling her that it was no light injury, but that it wasn't enough to thwart his loyalty to the Empire. She's perplexed and he is unsure if perhaps he spoke badly. She begins to consider it for a moment, then places her hands on the desk and walks over towards him, stating that something is not quite right, asking if he has always spoken like this. She then raises her sword up in front of him directly under his chin, stating that he feels like an outsider.